Okay, everyone, so I'm going to talk about some trends now in 2020s, the decade of 2020s. Now, before mentioning this, I've said on many occasions before that nobody can predict the future. So I'm just, really talking about some ideas. And of course, these ideas might well be the future or they might not be the future. But I'm going to talk about one idea now, which really has been going on for a long time, but I think people are going to be shocked at the pace of change in the next 5 or 10 years. Now, what is that? Now, essentially, we often now prefer to deal with a machine than a fellow human. Now, be honest, if you're like me, if you go to the supermarket, you quite like going to the humanless place where you don't have to interact with anyone. Or likewise, next time you go to an airport around the world, be honest, when you go to the machine generated system, once you get used to it, it's much nicer, isn't it, than having someone say, oh, where are you staying today? Where's your visa? It's not much easier to deal with a machine. Likewise, I really don't like calling people if I'm late for something. I just prefer using Google Maps, right? Because if we're being honest, with the exception of a small number of people we already trust, we don't always like to deal with people on a face-to-face basis, at least. Same when it comes to business. Everyone loves buying, but not many people like to be sold to, especially face to face. If it's something like email, at least you can just ignore it. But when it's face to face, a lot of people don't like that. But I think what's happened in the last 5 or 10 years, where more and more things are going online, that's going to be a big trend in the next 5 or 10 years. In other words, you're going to have a lot more things like maybe by the end of the decade, just saying, oh, Alexa, find me that lawyer. And then you can somehow be connected to a lawyer very quickly. And you can just pay that lawyer there and then with your credit card. Say, Alexa, charge my credit card to this lawyer. It's done there and then. I'm not saying everything's going to go that way. Of course, seeing the doctor is still going to have to be, face to face. But I do think the next stage of digital is going to be to make it even easier for people to do things. In other words, if you want to unsubscribe from someone's mail list, just say, well, Alexa, unsubscribe me now, please. Or Alexa, I want to buy. So I think we're going to become more impatient. We're not going to want to deal with our fellow man face to face much anymore. We're going to actually, the movement which has happened in the last 30 years is going to just accelerate. In other words, 1995, how many people realistically trusted the internet? It's incredible, but most people did not trust giving their credit card details online. Whereas now, most people trust that more than filling out a paper application form with their kind of 16-digit credit card number. Even 10 years ago, 20% of the UK's population, it's incredible to think now, didn't even have fast internet. Whereas the last 5 years, most of us would trust Uber more and a stranger more using Uber than the conventional taxi drivers. Why? Because it's traceable. Only somebody who's an idiot would try to, I don't know, sexually assault your daughter or your son or do something really bad like steal from you when it's all traceable. So people want that. They want online, they want traceable. And by the way, talking about taxis, when driverless taxis are finally here, I think that's going to absolutely take off because people are going to like not having to talk to the driver. It sounds kind of blunt, but I think human interaction, face-to-face human interaction, society is fundamentally changing. We are moving from an industrial economy to a digital economy. And in a way, it's a little bit like going back in time but global. Now, what do I mean by that? If you start before the Industrial Revolution, in, say, the UK or many countries, most people were small business owners like Baker. If your second name was Baker, often your family was a baker. So your second name would often determine, like Smith, I think that's no example. Your second name would determine what kind of small business you would have. And most people were small-time business people. I think eventually, it might take 10 years, 20 years or whatever, but we're going to have more and more online small people. And obviously people who are, doing a hell of a lot of revenue. But that's the way the world's going towards, really a more entrepreneurial world with less face-to-face interaction, more digital world. And in the same way that Instagram at one stage was $1 billion company with only 4 company employees, I actually think, I know it sounds incredible, but there's going to be some kind of it could be an Instagram influencer, it could be a YouTube influencer. There's going to be somebody whose personal brand is so big that they can IPO on the stock market. In other words, it could be in 10 years by the end of the decade, or it could take another 10, 20 years. But, something like, I don't know, Imagine Robert Kiyosaki, if he was young now, 30 years ago, robertkiyosaki.com is IPOing now on the stock market. There will be somebody who's basically is just one person, a one person business, their first and last name.com, and they'll be able to generate enough revenue where they can IPO on the stock market. Now, we'll see if I'm proven right on that or not, but we are moving into a completely different world, so people do need to adapt.